Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Welcome to My Weekly Mixtape, a podcast that takes the classic mixtape approach to building a modern playlist. I'm your host, Brian Colburn, and I am so thankful to be here tonight to celebrate 100 episodes of My Weekly Mixtape. Putting that into perspective, I have been podcasting since 2017, starting with Tune Styles and then with Playlist Wars, and both of those shows ended their runs, I want to say, in the low 80s and high 60s, respectively. So when I started this show, I had no idea how long it was going to go. I had no idea if it was going to take off. I had no idea what to expect. And I have been so grateful that the show has taken off over these last 100 episodes. So I am delighted to finally go into triple digits tonight, and I wanted to do so in a special way. And the way I was going to do that was, one, not make it just one episode long, because this is a pretty big deal. It's taken me a long time to get to this point. I've been podcasting since 2017. So episode 100 can't just be one episode. So instead, over the course of this week, episode 100 is actually going to be episode 100, episode 101, and episode 102. Because I have so much content to celebrate 100 episodes, it needs 3 episodes worth of My Weekly Mixtape to share it with all of you. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is the fact that I didn't want to do something that was just another episode. I wanted to have some fun and put a spin on something that's been a part of music interviews probably as long as there have been music interviews, and that is the quote-unquote favorite song question, or as I'm referring to it tonight, the time capsule question. So what I started doing around episode 50, because I knew at that point that I had some traction and the show had some legs, and I had a hopeful feeling that I would get to episode 100, and I'm very grateful that I'm here now. But what I started doing was I started asking at the end of each interview this softball question. But what I didn't tell all of the people that I was asking this question was that there was a part 2 to why I was asking the question. With the small caveat that the Patreon mixtapers did know the story behind what I was doing with these answers. As you know, the Patreon mixtapers are always in the know of what I've got going on behind the scenes here at My Weekly Mixtape. But all of the guests and friends of the show who I asked this question, not so much. But now, the question itself is pretty simple. If you had to choose one song for the ultimate mixtape, meaning any song, any genre, that would be locked away in a time capsule for others to discover years or maybe decades from now, which song would you choose and why? This is the Desert Island Song question. So I've asked that over and over and over again over the last year and change. Guests of the show, friends of the show, the amazing Patreon mixtapers. Anytime I could get somebody that was willing to answer this question, I asked it and I got their answer. And I've compiled 65 separate answers. Now comes the spin. Over the course of this and the next 2 episodes, which are all coming your way this week, I'm going to take those 65 answers and curate them into a playlist that hopefully makes sense in some way, shape, or form. Now, nobody knew that there were other people answering this question. Everybody answered from a personal perspective. So these songs run the gamut from pop to rock to dance to metal to punk. It's all in here. And I have to kind of weave my way through and try to make these songs make sense as a playlist. So this is certainly the most challenging episode I have ever done, but it's the one I'm probably the most excited about because over these 100 episodes, I've had the chance to talk to some people that I'm massive fans of their band and their art and their work. I've had friends of the show come on and give these incredible answers. I've had the chance to truly fulfill my love of music through this show. And now I get to try to do it with all of these people at the same time. So this is really, really cool and really, really stupid. As I scroll down this list of songs and look at what I've put myself into, these are truly going to be the most challenging 3 episodes of my weekly mixtape ever. And I am so glad you're here to go through this, as I'm going to call it, journey at this point. Now, diving a little bit into the psyche that goes behind what happens here at my weekly mixtape, one of my immediate concerns was, oh God, am I going to have 10 people all chiming in with the exact same song? Well, I'm happy to report that using this almost Family Feud style of asking, surveying 100 people, I didn't get to 100, unfortunately, but, the 65 responses I've received to this one question, there are multiple picks from only 4 bands or artists and only 1 song that more than one person chose. So I just want to put that into perspective, how varied this smorgasbord of songs really is. And now that we've gotten that out of the way, before we get into the good stuff, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind you that if you like what you're hearing on the show, you can help me out by either telling a friend, leaving the show a 5-star review wherever you're tuning in, or becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. There you can find ad-free episodes of the show, gain access to future My Weekly Mixtape episodes, chime in on upcoming topics, become a future guest, and so much more. Such as chiming in with your time capsule songs, which we've got a bunch of the Patreon mixtapers in the fold across these 3 episodes. And I can't wait for you to hear some of the songs they've chosen. And I also can't wait to try to figure out how the hell I'm going to include some of the songs that they've chosen, because some of them are really putting me to the test with their song choices. But once again, if you'd like to be a part of this conversation moving forward in the next 100 episodes, come join the fellow mixtapers at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. 65 songs. Where do I even begin? Well, let's start with something that is undeniable, because I figure with this type of playlist, I'm going to use a little bit of a roller coaster approach. Given there's so many genres going on here, I think we're going to use the jam band roller coaster approach of peaks and valleys. We're going to have some big loud moments. We're going to bring it down and have some quieter moments, and then bring it up and have some big fun moments, and then maybe bring it back down, kind of like the way a roller coaster would work. So to start it big, I think my friend DT Carroll from Space Castle nails it with his song choice, so we're going to go with that. Now, I'm not going to play the question 65 times over and over and over again, because it'll drive everybody listening and myself mad, so that won't be happening. So just to remind you before we get into this, the question is, if you had to choose one song for the ultimate mixtape, any song, any genre, to be locked away in a time capsule only to be discovered years or decades from now, which song would you choose and why? Here's DT's response to that question.
That's a big ask, but Helter Skelter by the Beatles.
Whoa.
Yeah. The White Album's amazing. I feel like people are going to want to throw that into the time capsule anyway, and I want to beat them to the punch with one of the most influential rock songs ever. It arguably kicked off the heavy metal genre. I mean, you can't get much more influential than that, but it's also Paul McCartney with his most underrated like rock and roll scream ever. People don't think about Paul McCartney having just an awesome rock scream, and he just wails in his song. Like Ringo Starr, you wouldn't think of Ringo Starr being like this heavy like rock drummer, and here he is like just blowing everybody's minds. Like it's where the Beatles were at sort of like a crossroads musically, I think, and it's got notes of like their previous stuff. Like it's still very approachable, but at the same time, it's one of those songs where people are like, what the hell are you doing, Beatles? What kind of drugs are we on now? Like, you know, it's wildly influential. It's my favorite Beatles song, and it's obviously one of the most influential and famous bands of all time. Like probably one of the top 10 most famous bands of all time. And if we're going with that, I'm going to do my favorite song, and one of the songs I think it was one of the craziest and most out of left field they ever wrote. And they wrote some weird shit. So yeah, Helter Skelter by the Beatles is going to the time capsule.
I mean, when you think about it, Motley Crue, U2, Pat Benatar, hell, even Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson, they've all covered this song. There's probably more covers of Helter Skelter than there are actual not covers of Helter Skelter.
There's probably more covers of Helter Skelter than there are Beatles songs. There's like 4,000 Beatles songs. So, yeah.
Easily a contender for one of my cover song dive bonus episodes, if that banter didn't make that apparent enough. Great pick from DT. I'm extremely grateful for him for joining me on several episodes. He's actually closing in on board short status for those of you that know that reference. But you can hear him on the Ultimate 2023 and 2024 playlist episodes, among several others. So if you've been listening over the last 100 episodes, you already know what a fun and knowledgeable guest DT is. But outside of my weekly mixtape, if you haven't seen Space Castle on YouTube, do yourself a favor and watch some of the best nerd culture centric content that I've seen. You will love Space Castle. Now, with that said, I have to follow up Helter Skelter by the Beatles. And the second song of the night has to help kind of set the overall tone. I mean, if you're at a live concert, some bands want to keep the pedal to the metal, and others choose to veer off in a slightly different direction. And I think that's what I'm going to do, because I'm going to bring the tempo and the energy down just a bit with Brian Scott of the Union Underground and Cult of Follow's answer to the ultimate mixtape question.
Wow. God. I mean, that's almost impossible. Maybe Breakdown from Tom Petty.
You're speaking my language.
There you go. Yeah. Why? There's so many reasons. I mean, I listen to things for so many different reasons, you know, being a producer, a songwriter, a fan. That record, that entire record really is so great sonically. It's so great songwriting wise. It would just have to be that, because it's just Tom Petty is rules. That's it. That's why. That's why.
That he most certainly does. It's no surprise to anyone listening that Tom Petty is my favorite artist of all time, so I didn't want to waste any time making sure he was included in a time capsule, just in case it was to run out of room or anything like that. I mean, this song has such a great groove to it, from Mike Campbell's tasty guitar work and Petty's, at the time of the recording, youthful rasp to his voice. It's just an absolute staple. Reached number 40 on the US Billboard Hot 100 chart and Canada's RPM Top Singles chart. Now, if live music is your thing, be sure to check out Tom Petty's The Live Anthology, as he mixes in a little bit of Hit the Road Jack on a nearly 8-minute version of the song. That entire box set is absolute perfection, if you ask me, though. Glad that Tom Petty's Breakdown is in the fold. Now back to the Union Underground here. If you're a fan of them, be sure to check out episode 57 with Brian as we dive into their An Education in Rebellion album, their song Across the Nation that was featured on WWE's Raw as the theme music for almost 4 years. It was such a great conversation, and I'm so psyched to see them back on the road and doing their thing again. Really hoping 2025 we get some new music from them as well. But to follow up the Beatles and Tom Petty. I'm going to keep this little classic rock radio-esque vibe thing that we've got going here to start off as Drew Copeland of Sister Hazel answers the ultimate mixtape question.
Man, I thought about this because I know that this is a question that you ask, and I keep going back to that. There's so many like iconic songs. I was like, man, there's a Boston tune that I would say has to be on there. There's several James Taylor songs that I'm like, man, how can you have a playlist and not have that? The ultimate. I don't know, man. Dude, it's weird because I always feel guilty saying it, but how about Stone in Love?
Oh, hell
Journey.
Yeah. Journey? Yes.
Yeah.
That is my all-time favorite Journey song, so I love the pick.
How can you not have that song? I don't know. There's so many I could pick from, but you caught me in that kind of mood, so that's what I'd go with.
The fact that Stone in Love is only on Journey's Greatest Hits Volume 2 and not Volume 1 was an abomination. I was so offended at that.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And God, man, that guy, what a voice, man. Oh, such a gift. Incredible.
The fifth single from their massive Escape album. And when I say single, I have to use quote marks, at least here in the US, because it was only released in the UK as a single. So if you pair that fact along with what I had mentioned to Drew about it only appearing on Greatest Hits Volume 2, and the fact that the song is still consistently in the band's live set lists to this day, I feel like Stone in Love is the most underrated Journey hit, a crazy oversight on the label's part to not release it worldwide, and then from a personal opinion, my favorite all-time Journey song. So I absolutely love the fact that Drew went with this one. It was such a pleasure having him on the show for episode 62, where we co-curated the ultimate Sister Hazel playlist. I hope that it pleases all levels of hazelnut fandom. So with that, the Beatles, Tom Petty, and Journey. Scrolling up and down this list, I think we need to keep this classic rock radio vibe thing going just a little bit longer, because looking through the list, classic rock was a popular subset of the songs chosen. But like I said, we're just getting started here. We're just scratching the surface. So let's move right along into track 4 as Britt Lightning of Vixen chimes in with her answer to the ultimate mixtape question.
I think Hotel California. I think the future should still be listening to Hotel California. And why? Because I just think it's this enchanting song. Like I said, takes you on a story, leads you through an imaginational journey that you can interpret for yourself. The guitar lines are awesome. The vocals are amazing. All the musicianship in that band is great. And I just think it does capture that moment in time when it was recorded that it will last forever.
The song reached number 1 on the Billboard US Hot 100 and Canada's Top Singles chart and was a top 10 hit in the UK, France, the Netherlands, Germany, Spain, New Zealand, Norway, and Switzerland, and is the band's third most performed song across their entire discography after Desperado and Take It Easy, despite those albums coming out 3 and 4 years earlier than Hotel California. In 2003, the song was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame, and in 2004, Rolling Stone magazine ranked it 49 on its list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. Britt was my guest on episode 64, the Ultimate Classic Rock playlist, where this song may or may not have been a part of that conversation as well. You'll have to go back and tune in to find out, because I like to tease. But moving on from Hotel California, I think I need to add one more song from this classic rock arsenal before a pivot comes into play. And I think we'll stay in Eagles universe as Ben Montgomery from Records Revisited answers the ultimate mixtape question.
Damn. Ultimate mixtape. Let's go funk number 49 from the James Gang.
Ooh.
I mean, I've mentioned this multiple times on my podcast, Joe Walsh and any variation of Joe Walsh bands are really great road trip music. And come on, this song is so damn good.
From 1970's James Gang Rides Again, the song reached number 59 on the Billboard US Hot 100 and has remained a classic rock staple ever since. Ben was my guest for episode 66, the ultimate spellbinding songs playlist, and I've been a guest several times over the years on Records Revisited, dating all the way back to my Tune Styles days. I love what they've got going on over there, so be sure to check them out and tell Ben and Wayne I said hello when you do. Now, following up Funk 49, I think I'm going to bring us out of this classic rock vibe and lean into something a little bit more, well, funky, with this pick from Jim Laughlin of Mo.
My one song to be added to the Ultimate Mixtape, which will be put in a time vault and opened years down the road, would be The Ballad of Bodacious by Primus off the record Antipop. Picked this song despite the fact that my favorite Primus drummer, Tim Alexander, isn't on the track. I picked this song despite the fact that Antipop isn't even Primus's favorite Primus record. I picked this song because it's unbelievably original. The bass, the drums, the guitar are amazing. The story is mostly true. And it's probably the only, one of the only songs written about a rodeo bull. So you really can't beat that.
One of the few songs from Antipop that was produced solely by Primus. This is definitely a divisive pick depending on what level of Primus fan you are. And as Jim said, even the band has kind of distanced themselves from this album. But I'm with Jim here. This song is awesome, and I'm not going to lie. Even though the album itself might lack a bit of direction, that's obviously going to happen when you feature different producers on an album. And Antipop has a wide array of producers alongside of Primus, the likes of Tom Waits, Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine, Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit, Stuart Copeland of The Police, and Matt Stone of South Park. Yes, if you're a fan of South Park, you already know the history between the band and the show, so that really won't be too surprising to you at all, but he is a producer on a track on this album. Now, as far as Mo goes, 2025 is going to be an insanely busy year for the band, as they're not only celebrating the band's 35th anniversary, they're also releasing a new album, Circle of Giants, on January 31st, so be sure to be on the lookout for that one. I hope to have Jim back on the show very soon, as he was such an amazing guest for episode 35, the Ultimate Mo playlist. And whether you're a jam band fan or not, there's a little bit of something for everyone in that discussion, so I highly recommend checking that episode out. Now, instead of leaning into the music for this next song choice, I'm going to lean into the band's connections, and in this case, that band is Primus, and they have a ton of connections with other bands. Now, as Jim mentioned, Tim Alexander, who didn't play on the track on Antipop, was drumming for Primus up until the end of 2024 when he left the band. But Primus is forging on with the drummer from this next band pulling double duty, at least for this one show, at their Live in the Sand festival, which takes place in March of 2025. Well, I hope that piqued your interest, because you're about to hear more about this band and this person's song choice from said band, and that is my friend Tony G over at Patio Slave with his choice for the Ultimate Mixtape.
One song for the Ultimate Mixtape. Man, doesn't matter where it comes from.
Any song, any genre.
Oh, man. A song that always gives me chills is Lateralis from Tool. I have seen them live probably 4 or 5 times and get goosebumps every time the opening to it. And I know the Fibonacci sequence and all that stuff that goes into it. If you want to deep dive that song and that record, there's a lot there. We did a whole episode on it. That was one of our best episodes too. It's back there in the archives if you're looking for it. But that song always finds its way into my headphones when I'm looking for a tried and true and a song that makes me remember why I love to listen to music. And this is one that's, A1 when it comes to that. So Lateralis, Tool, Goosebumps, just thinking about it, man.
The third single from the album of the same name, clocking in at 5 minutes and 47 seconds if you're listening to the radio edit, but let's be honest, no one's doing that unless they're hearing it on the radio. So, clocking in at 9 minutes and 24 seconds, Lateralis reached number 14 on the Billboard US Mainstream Rock Chart and number 18 on the US Alternative Airplay Chart. Also, Loudwire hailed Lateralis as the number one song on their list of the top 50 metal songs of the 21st century, so a beloved choice by many. Tony G was my guest on episode 85, the Ultimate Rage Against the Machine playlist, and he and the fellas over at Patio Slave have a great thing going on over there. So be sure to check out what they're doing over there. They're a great bunch of guys. I have to say, the music podcast community is a ridiculously strong one, and I, for one, am extremely grateful to be even included in a small fraction of it. But moving on from Tool, I'm going to step aside from leaning into the bands like I did for this pick, and I'm going to go lean into the music again. And what I'm going to do is lean into some of the prog elements that Tool brings to the table. Only I'm really going to lean into the prog here with this song choice from Christian Swain of Rock and Roll Archaeology and the founder and CEO of Pantheon Podcasts, the network that My Weekly Mixtape is extremely thankful to be a part of. Let's hear Christian's choice for the Ultimate Mixtape.
Well, Brian, I have to say first, I hate this question. I've always hated this question. It's just so hard for me to pick a particular song for a desert island or locked away in a time capsule to be discovered. One song is just so hard for me because I've loved so many songs. And that love is dependent on my mood. And so every day it could be a different song. But you asked the question, and I did think about it. And I did something recently with another guest from a famous rock band that we kind of flipped it around a little bit as opposed to the Desert Island playlist. We decided to look at it from a death row experience. And in fact, we did a full, like, what's the song for your last meal, the walk to the execution chamber, as they hit the switch, the afterlife. We did all kinds of things so that there were several songs that were included. But anyway, to your point, let's look at it from that perspective. Okay, I'm on death row. I'm about ready to meet my maker. The executioner is going to flip the switch. Well, gosh darn it, I want the longest song possible to play before that occurs. So, considering Rock and Roll Archaeology just finished its latest big episode, I Know What I Like, The Rise and Fall of Prog, I'm going to go with a prog song. And I'm going to go with Close to the Edge because it's like 20 minutes long. So I get an extra 20 minutes of life before the executioner pulls the trigger.
Probably one of the most creative approaches I've heard to answering this question out of the 65 answers, but it immediately begs me to ask, as amazing as Closer to the Edge is, Transatlantic's The Whirlwind, which, even though the CD has a track sequencing of 12 songs, is considered one 77-minute and 46-second track. So, Christian, if you really want to squeeze in a few extra breaths, you can thank the supergroup of Neil Morse, Mike Portnoy, Roy Stolt, and Pete Trewavas, because they've got you covered. But clocking in at a brief 18 minutes and 43 seconds in comparison, Closer to the Edge, the classic prog rock album side of 4 movements, is an absolutely masterful choice from Christian, and it's one that I'm sure the prog fans listening are applauding. So now, I'm going to follow up Closer to the Edge in a twofold sense, as I'm going to stay in this prog rock realm, and I'm also going to stick with the Pantheon Podcast Network as I play Steve from Something for Nothing, a Rush Fancast's pick for the Ultimate Mixtape. And I hope that introduction wasn't a spoiler in and of itself, but I guess we're about to find out.
A mixtape locked in a time capsule for future generations to hear. And of course, the song has to be a song about a futuristic society, and that song, of course, is a Rush song. It's Red Barchetta from Rush's arguably best album, Moving Pictures, and in my opinion, the greatest song on that album. This is a cinematic masterpiece. From the opening harmonics and Geddy's cool bass line at the beginning, as you're hanging out at your uncle's country place, and your uncle gives you a car to drive, and the music takes you on that ride in your uncle's red Barchetta. As the song moves along, you are on that road, the excitement shivering up and down your spine, firing up the willing engine, tires spitting gravel, wind in your hair. The music, the lyrics, everything is just perfect. And maybe there is a motor law by the time you dig up that time capsule. This song just fits perfectly on any mixtape. You get to the end of the song, you race back to the farm, dream with your uncle at the fireside, and move on to the next track on the mixtape.
I actually don't think you could say it any better than that. The song, while not a single from Moving Pictures, was number 5 on Rolling Stone's The 10 Best Rush Songs list, and number 3 on Ultimate Classic Rock's list of all 167 Rush songs, ranked worst to best. If you're a Rush fan listening, I highly recommend you dive into all the amazing content that Steve and Jerry have produced over at Something for Nothing. And if you want to get your My Weekly Mixtape Rush fix, Steve was my guest on episode 52. You ready for it? The Ultimate Rush playlist. Impossible task, whittling 167 songs down to 20, but give it a listen and let us know how we did. But now, to close out the first 10 songs of the Ultimate Mixtape, I'm going to take us a little bit away from the prog, but I'm going to keep that heft that Rush brings, and I'm going to amp it up a little bit with this classic choice from Royal Tusk's Sandy McKinnon.
One song.
One song. That's it. Just one.
You know what's funny? After we did this whole thing, it's the song that I didn't even write down. And it's probably going to be, when I was a kid, Hallowed Be Thy Name by Iron Maiden.
Oh, nice.
Of course, I gotta be the asshole who puts in an 8-minute track. The guitar line, when I was a kid, made me go bananas. And when I was about 5 years old, my mom asked me what I wanted for my birthday. And I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I had older brothers, and all I answered with was, I want heavy metal. My mom, being the sweet lady she is, went and got me Number of the Beast on cassette. And I listened to that record I actually had it on cassette. She got me the cassette. I listened to it till the ribbon snapped. Like, it was like completely overplayed. And I got another one. Did the same thing. I love Iron Maiden. Love Iron Maiden. So if I had to take one Desert Island song, it would be Iron Maiden's Hallowed Be Thy Name.
That is parenting done right.
100%, man. 100%. If there's one thing that I can always, I'm mom for a million things, but one thing for sure is that she got me into heavy music. And I can safely say that. My mom listens to great music. Growing up listening to The Clash, my mom loved Bad Religion and all that kind of shit. But I guess I loved heavy metal before I even knew it.
Horns up.
Big time, brother.
Considered by many to be one of the greatest heavy metal songs of all time, we're upping the irons with Hallowed Be Thy Name from Iron Maiden's The Number of the Beast. Now, I have to admit, having recently seen the Future Past World Tour, it was kind of a bummer that I caught only one of 3 tours that Iron Maiden has done since this song's inception that didn't include this song in the set list. The other 2 times were the Maiden England World Tour that ran from 2012 to 2014, and the second leg of the Book of Souls World Tour in 2017. However, I did catch Stranger in a Strange Land, which before this tour, according to setlist.fm at least, this is a song they only performed 5 times since 1987, leading into this Future Past tour. So it was really, really cool to catch that one live. I actually have a video of it that I'll embed over on the episode page at myweeklymixtape.com. Royal Tusk is still out there kicking ass and taking names, and Sandy was such an incredible guest for episode 63, the ultimate modern hard rock playlist. So if hard rock is your thing, you really don't want to miss that one, nor do you want to miss Royal Tusk's latest album, 2024's Altruistic, which we do an album dive as well on that episode. But there you have it, folks. Side A of the Ultimate Mixtape, Volume 1, which consists of the Beatles' Helter Skelter, provided by D.T. Carroll of Space Castle, Tom Petty's Breakdown, provided by Brian Scott of the Union Underground, Journey's Stone in Love, provided by Drew Copeland of Sister Hazel, Eagles' Hotel California, provided by Britt Lightning of Vixen, James Gang's Funk 49, provided by Ben Montgomery of Records Revisited, Primus, The Ballad of Bodacious, provided by Jim Laughlin of Mo, Tool's Lateralis, provided by Tony G of Patio Slave, Yes's Closer to the Edge, provided by Christian Swain of Rock and Roll Archaeology and CEO of Pantheon Podcasts, Rush's Red Barchetta, provided by Steve of Something for Nothing, a Rush fan cast, and Iron Maiden's Hallowed Be Thy Name, provided by Sandy McKinnon of Royal Tusk. Head over to myweeklymixtape.com to hear all the songs we discussed in this mix through the playlist embedded on the episode page. And now we're going to kick off Side B of Volume 1 of the Ultimate Mixtape, but keep in mind, this episode is a bit of a different animal. Think of this as like a box set, if you will. We're really going 1 through 65 here over the course of these 3 episodes. It's not necessarily broken out in a side-by-side basis. Think of this more like an 8-track tape, where at least in this instance, the song doesn't get cut off mid-tune, so it can flip from like track 3 to track 4. I tend to recall Iron Butterflies and Agata Davida doing that, but I digress. We closed out Side A with Iron Maiden's Hallowed Be Thy Name, as sent in by Sandy McKinnon of Royal Tusk. We are going to follow that up by keeping things heavy and going with this pick from Don Jameson of VH1 Classics, That Metal Show, and the Rockstrap Podcast.
What am I trying to leave for the person opening the time capsule specifically? Like, this is heavy metal? Is that what you're talking about?
Everybody has gone in a different direction with their answer with this one. So it's basically a song that you feel generations from now need to hear.
Well, let's put Heaven and Hell in there. I mean, that has all the elements that you could possibly want in a metal song. You know, if for some reason metal does die, which I don't believe it will, the first person that opens up this time capsule and listens to that song, they will start banging their head just out of pure instinct, and heavy metal will come to life again. So I'm gonna put Heaven and Hell in there. Just an unbelievable riff, incredible vocal performance by Ronnie, and not easy taking the place of Ozzy back then. But yeah, to me, that's as metal as it gets.
The title track from Black Sabbath's 9th studio album, and first without Ozzy on lead vocals, as the band featured at this point the late, great Ronnie James Dio on the mic. Heaven and Hell ranked number 11 in Martin Popoff's book, The Top 500 Heavy Metal Songs of All Time. It also reached number 81 on VH1's Best Hard Rock Songs of All Time, and Kerrang! And Louder Sound ranked the song number 3 and number 2 on their respective lists of the greatest Black Sabbath songs. Don was a ridiculously knowledgeable guest on episode 68, the Ultimate 80s Metal Playlist. And if you've ever watched That Metal Show, you already know that. But it's great to see him be a part of the Pantheon Podcast Network with the Rockstrap Podcast. I look forward to collaborating with him again in the future, as episode 68 was an absolute blast. Now, I like this heavy direction we're headed right now, so I think I'm going to keep this vibe going a little while longer with this pick from Joe Milliken, author of Let's Go, Benjamin Orr, and the Cars.
Well, Brian, this is certainly a tough one to answer. But if I had to choose just one song to include in your ultimate mixtape, I would have to go with my favorite song from my all-time favorite album, Rats in the Cellar, from the 1976 Aerosmith album titled Rocks. With the Rocks album, I believe Aerosmith was at the peak of their hard rock powers, and Rats in the Cellar epitomizes what badass 70s hard rock was all about. From the guitar sputtering opening of the song that sounds like the engine's starting, the song just takes off into this powerful, fuel-injected groove that just builds and builds and builds into a thunderous roar. From the dark, raunchy lyrics, cool guitar interplay between Joe Perry and Brad Whitford, some razor-sharp vocals, and an almost jazzy-feeling harmonica solo from Steven Tyler, all tapped off with a blistering guitar solo from Perry that brings everything up to a crescendo before it all comes crashing down into a pile of smoke and rubble at song's end. It's brilliant. For this fan, Rats in the Cellar represents everything that is great about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame band from Boston.
From Aerosmith's classic album Rocks, the album that Slash said sums up his taste in hard rock bands to this day and was one of Kurt Cobain's favorite albums, as well as everyone from Metallica to Motley Crue citing it as influential to their music. Love the pick. Now, Joe wrote a book, Let's Go, Benjamin Orr and the Cars, so you might ask yourself, why didn't he pick a Cars song? I'm guessing there's two reasons for that, and one of which is he already picked 10 Cars songs on episode 39, the Ultimate Cars playlist, and two, he's currently finishing up a new book all about Aerosmith's Joe Perry, so be on the lookout for that one later this year. Now, the next song up is actually a pretty easy choice for me, as I feel like these songs sit perfectly next to each other. So with that, here's Miles Schumann of Rock Camp the Podcast with his pick for the Ultimate Mixtape.
It's the most impossible question of all time, but if I'm going to choose my personal one, the first band that really got me into this music was Guns N' Roses, and I loved Mr. Brownstone. That was my favorite Off Appetite of all time. I love the drums and everything, and so for a long time, I considered that my favorite song of all time, so I that's my pick.
Mr. Brownstone was the first Guns N' Roses single released outside of the US as the A-side of It's So Easy over in the UK, but I remember it here in the US as the B-side of Welcome to the Jungle, one of the first parental advisory explicit lyric cassettes I picked up back in the 80s. This album was my quote-unquote maturing and listening to what would become my personal taste in hard rock music at the time. For me, if I had to pick my two favorite songs from Appetite for Destruction, it would be It's So Easy and Mr. Brownstone, so I love the choice here. And you can hear more from Miles on episode 64, the Ultimate Classic Rock Anthems playlist, along with Britt Lightning of Vixen, who chimed in earlier with Eagles Hotel California. And you can also catch them both on Rock Camp, the podcast. So I feel like we're hitting this nice hard rock stride here, so I'm going to keep things going with this pick from Winona Fighter's Coco Kinnan.
Just any song ever?
You are correct.
I'm going to have to go with my favorite song of all time. Foo Fighters, Best of You.
Wow. Incredible song. Why'd you choose it?
I love the message behind it. I think it's such a powerful fucking song. I think it'll get you in your feels, but just like how I want people to feel with I'm in the Market to Please No One, that song makes me feel strong, and it makes me feel like I can do anything.
The song reached number 18 on the Billboard US Hot 100, number 1 on the Canada Rock Top 30 and the UK Rock and Metal charts, number 5 in Australia, and was also a top 10 hit in Belgium, Hungary, and Scotland. And in terms of cover songs, I don't think we could talk about Best of You without bringing up Prince's live version from his Super Bowl halftime show performance. Was it a hat tip to the Foo Fighters cover of Darling Nikki back in the 90s? Sadly, I don't think we're ever going to know the answer to that one, but damn, was that a killer cover. Coco was such a delight to have on episode 71, the Ultimate 90s Punk Rock playlist, and she'll be back this February for an album dive into Winona Fighter's first full-length studio album, My Apologies to the Chef, so be on the lookout for that one. Now, Best of You took the pace down slightly coming out of Mr. Brownstone, but don't worry, I'm picking it right back up again with this song choice from Patreon mixtaper Tom Hutchinson.
The ultimate mixtape. Ooh, so there's anything goes here. This is
all bets are off.
Wow, you've hit me with the hypothetical steel chair here, Brian. That is God. I mean, there is so many songs that I could pick. Oh God. If I had to pick one song and we're putting it on the hypothetical mixtape of life, and everybody is going to have to hear it to the end of time, I'm not going to pick something everybody's probably heard in their life. I am going to go a little outside the realm. And, you know, it might get a little bit of hate. It might get a little bit of love. But I'm going to go with Seven Dust's Denial.
Ooh, okay.
It's a personal favorite of mine. LaJohn Witherspoon is a fantastic lead singer. He enjoys audiences. He enjoys people in general. So that's one vibe of it for me. But that song, it starts slow, has a fun, just heavy punch to it. But it's 90s nu metal at its best. Seven Dust isn't as popular as Limp Bizkit, Korn, or anybody in that realm. It's just a good band that people don't give a lot of love to.
And what I'll add to that, to what you said, they might not have been as popular as Limp Bizkit or Korn, but I think it's safe to say that Seven Dust might be one of the most respected nu metal bands by every other band in that scene. I feel like if they had a meeting of all the nu metal bands and they were all in a room and they said, which band do you respect the most in this room? Put it in a hat. I don't know. I think Seven Dust might win it unanimously because I have never heard another band or another nu metal fan say something bad about this group as people and as musicians.
No, and I hate to say it, but the nu metal band that people aren't really familiar with, Snot, I mean, I love them. Their self-titled album, the only album they have is fantastic. But LaJohn Witherspoon and Seven Dust were huge friends with them.
Yeah.
And when the lead singer, mind me, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, passed away in a car accident, they helped complete their album that was in production. And they got a bunch of people within the nu metal community to sing a lot of the songs, but Seven Dust played a lot of the backing. LaJohn Witherspoon did a few songs. And like you said, they're fantastic guys. I mean, I got a cameo with LaJohn, and it was awesome. Super nice guy, answered all my questions that I had, and still made me laugh. And if you haven't watched their Woodstock 99 performance out there, please do, because it's 45 minutes front to back of fantasticness.
And I'll just add, the lead singer was Lynn Straight.
Thank you. I couldn't remember it all.
Yeah, the album was called Straight Up. That was the tribute album. If anybody wants to look up Snot, again, ridiculously underrated. I think Snot would have been as big as Limp Bizkit and Korn had the tragedy not happened with Lynn.
100%. I think that first album, I mean, every song on it, it was like an 80s punk mix of like Black Flag and Circle Jerks meets like a heavy metal of like Faith No More, like, or, you know, even like a Pearl Jam, a heavy Pearl Jam, and just slam them together to an amazing album.
The lead single from their 1999 album Home, the song reached number 14 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock Chart and number 26 on the Modern Rock Chart. Tom has been a guest twice on My Weekly Mixtape thus far. First on episode 65, the Ultimate Tony Hawk Pro Skater Soundtracks playlist, and then on episode 96, the Ultimate Punk Rock Workout playlist. Both were extremely fun conversations, and I'm sure Tom will be back this year with another topic as him and I are currently working out some ideas on the side. Now, more importantly, I want to thank Tom for being a huge part of the Patreon Mixtaper community. And if those listening would like to join us, visit patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. Now, coming out of Seven Dust, I know where I want to go in the several songs ahead, but I need to start to bring us out of this heavier side of things to get us there. And I think this next song will be the perfect transition to where we're currently sitting now in the playlist to where I want to head next. So with that said, here's Zach Derby of Neatcast with his song choice for the Ultimate Mixtape.
The greatest for all time? How do I choose this? Oh my gosh. All right, so thank you for springing that on me. So I, as quickly as I could, going through, again, the plethora of songs and shit that I have filed in my brain. There's a lot of great songs I love personally. I love listening to. I love cranking up if I'm driving in the car. It's like, man, I love hearing Thunderstruck. Or, man, if I want to cry, I'm going to listen to Landslide. But for me, a song that when I heard it, I was playing this on college radio. And it was unique. I hadn't heard anything like it. And the singer was like a Brad Delp. And I mean that in the sense that he could sing lower. He could go higher than I necessarily would like. But I mean, it stuck out. And then years and years later, when my wife and I finally sit down to choose a song, and how I convinced her to be my wife, I'm still not sure.
I know the feeling.
We were going through a variety of different songs that meant something to us. And this song off this album, we had both heard at different times of our lives. But it spoke to us, and we found a wonderful cover of it that we actually played for our wedding entrance song and our dance. But I'm going to go with The Darkness, I Believe in a Thing Called Love.
I knew it. As soon as you said Brad Delp, I'm like, we're getting The Darkness.
And that was a band that when I heard them, I went, what is this? How is he able to just do that? And it's just so high and then come back down. And it's just a fun song. And they've got weird shit. They've got weird songs. And that one is certainly out there, but it was just straightforward, and it still means the world to me because that was something that we were able to connect with and incorporate into our lives and into our wedding, even though it be a more appropriately themed and timed cover, but still it was worked in.
Well, being the cover fanatic that I am, I have to follow up and ask who did the cover, because now I want to hear it.
So Dana, my wife, was the one who found this. It was a couple called Colin and Caroline, and they do an awesome duo acoustic guitars version of it. And it's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's what we wanted. We did get The Darkness playing during the party side of things. So they did play the rock and roll version during the wedding, but for us to have our dance and everything, it was Colin and Caroline.
From their debut 2003 album, Permission to Land, the song reached number 19 on the Billboard US Bubbling Under Hot 100 singles chart. It also hit number 6 on the Canada Rock Top 30, number 40 in Australia, and number 2 on the UK singles chart, among many others. This song always put a smile on my face. It was unlike anything out there when it first hit, at least the airwaves here in the US. At the time, early 2003, it was pop punk, post-grunge, and new metal still holding strong. This was different. This was this old school, almost 80s metal sounding glam rock. And to me, it just hit at the perfect time of nostalgia for that era when I was growing up. And there was no escaping this song anywhere you went. It was all over the radio. I love Zach's story and the way he used the song. I actually had a chance to hang out with Zach in person because, believe it or not, some of us podcasters meet offline at times, but I got to meet him and his wonderful family. Just another testament to the power of podcasting and the community that I've become a part of that I'm so grateful for. Zach was a guest on episode 76, the ultimate guilt-free 90s Guilty Pleasures playlist, and he's doing some awesome stuff over with the gentlemen at Neatcast, so be sure to follow up with what they've got going on over there. And with his pick of The Darkness, I have a way now to move us out of hard rock and into something a little bit more punky, because there is some punk songs in my list, and I feel like coming out of The Darkness is going to be the only way I can get there in a reasonable manner. So I'm going to start with this pick from Matt Kennedy over at X Radio X.
All right, Brian, I've given this a lot of thought. To craft the ultimate mixtape, you need to have something fun, something that rocks, something that doesn't suffer from repeat listening. And because you and I have a history of discussing punk covers, I have to include a punk cover. I want to stay within my wheelhouse, within the theme if you will. So I've got to go with something from Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. I know you're a fan, and I would definitely go, just to throw you a curve, I would go with Science Fiction Double Feature by Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, a song they covered from the Rocky Horror Picture Show soundtrack. It's a great jam. It's so fun. It's a little bit silly, and I love it. So that's what I would include in this ultimate mixtape.
From 1999's Aura Drag, Me First and the Gimme Gimmes cover of Science Fiction Double Feature from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. As someone who spent many a Saturday nights in high school and college going to see Rocky Horror in the theaters, I approve this pick. Now, if you're a fan of punk covers, I've got you covered, as Matt was a guest on episode 26, the Ultimate Punk Rock Cover Songs playlist. And while I will spoil the fact that Me First and the Gimme Gimmes does make our list, I'm not going to say which song, so I'm really not giving too much away there. Once again, shout out to Matt and his co-host Jace over at X Radio X. They're putting out some fun music-related content over there as well, so be sure to check out what they're doing, and I hope we get to continue this musical podcasting friendship we've developed over the years. But now that we've gotten into the punk section of the mixtape, it's a perfect time to add this choice from Fox and Friends, Ed Kennard.
I have been dreading this question. Because there's no way this doesn't look bad for me, because like there's so many artists I know and love, and like in some cases know personally, but don't I have to go with my partner for this, Brian? Don't I have to put him in the mixtape forever?
I would say so, yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, he's much smaller than I am physically, so it's not like he's gonna beat me up, but like he might try. But I'm going to use the song that we use for the theme song for Fox and Friends, which is a Black Guy Fawkes song. It is New American Meltdown. It's political punk rock with a hard driving beat, great lyrics, and I mean, it's my current theme song. I have to choose the song that is my current theme song, right? It's so great working with an artist, so you have like a built-in theme song that you don't have to like worry about like licensing. It's like, hey, he wrote the song. We can use it all we want. I promise. Thank you. So yeah, you know what? Black Guy Fawkes, New American Meltdown. That's going to be my choice.
From 2022's Life, Love, and the Bomb, Black Guy Fawkes was a part of 2024's Lost Evenings Festival that's hosted by Episode 5, My Weekly Mixtape guest, Frank Turner. So if you're a fan of folk punk or punk rock in general, be sure to check out his music. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know Ed via his former podcast, The Greatest Song Ever Sung Poorly, and now he's with Fox and Friends, and he's been a guest twice on My Weekly Mixtape, all the way back as one of my first episodes, episode 3, the Ultimate Songs of 1993 playlist, as well as episode 86, the Ultimate Karaoke 101 playlist, PSAs, cliches, and home runs. I appreciate Ed's friendship and support of the show, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with him again in 2025 because we always have a great time talking music. Now, believe it or not, we're going to do a little bit of a pivot here again because there's not many punk rock picks overall out of the 65 songs, but there's certainly that influence and that vibe and that spirit that lives and breathes in other songs, including this next pick, which comes your way from Australia and Patreon mixtaper Seeker.
Hi, Brian. It's Seeker here, all the way from Australia. My pick for the ultimate mixtape is The Dogs Are Talking by The Angels. The Angels are another Australian band, and I'm here to represent Australian music. I don't know exactly how well it's received overseas, but I think it is pretty well received. The Angels came out of a time that produced AC/DC and Skyhooks and other amazing Australian bands from the 70s and 80s. This song, I think, was released in 1990, but it just rocks. It's got a really great start and it just fires into it. I really recommend all your listeners look for The Angels, otherwise known as Angel City. So, yeah, give it a bell.
From their 1989 album, The Angels from Angel City, here in the US at least, or 1990's Beyond Salvation in Australia, and in a strange synergy with early AC/DC releases, those two albums I just mentioned completely different track listings, depending on if you get the US or the Australia edition. Plus, the US version included re-recorded versions of some of the Angels' earlier hits. So that might be something that Seeker and I maybe have to send each other a trade of the US and Australia versions of the discs. But back to Dogs Are Talking. The song reached number 11 in Australia and number 12 in New Zealand. Thank you again to Seeker for the pick. It's truly awesome having people from all over the world in the Patreon community because we're getting to hear stories that are genuine to where people are from. But the Angels are probably a band that flew under the radar for a lot of people here in the US. So I think it's awesome that we're getting to talk about them on this show today, getting that Australian perspective. And with that, for our last song of the side, I think we're going to follow up Dogs Are Talking with this choice from the Gin Blossoms, Robin Wilson.
Well, you see, I got a lot of tattoos here, and all of these most of these tattoos are the lyrics or the titles of some of my favorite songs. So I've got Tom Petty right here. The waiting is the hardest part. The opening line of Bohemian Rhapsody. Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Here I've got David Bowie. Turn and face the strange changes. The Rolling Stones, War Children, it's just a shot away. Cheap Trick, Surrender, but don't give yourself away. All of these songs, any one of those could be the right answer. I'll give you two of them that I would suggest. One would be from Cheap Trick. I would say California Man. To me, it's the very definition of a rock and roll song. If you were to try to explain to some visiting aliens, like, what is rock and roll, I think you could just put on California Man by Cheap Trick and say, this is it. This is rock and roll. So I would say that. And then, but just as a fan that, has made a lot of mixtapes, and been affected by the bands that I've grown up listening to and wanted to emulate, I think if I could only choose one song to put on a mixtape, I would vote for She Sells Sanctuary by The Cult.
Nice.
So I've got that one right there in the crook of my elbow. She Sells Sanctuary, I think, is maybe the coolest song of the 1980s. And so the Cult had a huge influence on me as a songwriter, as a performer. The reason I play tambourine is because of the Cult. They were the only hard rock band that was playing a lot of tambourine in the 80s. And I latched onto that. And I decided if I ever get to be a lead singer in a rock band, I'm going to play tambourine. And I took it upon myself to really get it down and study at the feet of the masters. So, I think if I could only pick one song for a mixtape, it would be She Sells Sanctuary by The Cult.
From 1985's Love, the song reached number 36 on the Billboard US Dance Club Songs chart, number 11 on Canada's Top Singles chart, number 15 in the UK, number 45 in Europe, number 27 in Ireland, and number 35 in the Netherlands. Worldwide hit here. It was an absolute pleasure talking all things Gin Blossoms with Robin on episode 78. So if you're a fan of their music, you don't want to miss that sit down. But there you have it, folks. Side B of Volume 1 of the Ultimate Mixtape. 20 of the 65 songs down. The songs you just heard consist of Black Sabbath's Heaven or Hell, provided by Don Jamieson of VH1 Classics That Metal Show and Rockstrap. Aerosmith's Rats in the Cellar, provided by Joe Milligan, author of Let's Go, Benjamin Orr and the Cars. Guns N' Roses' Mr. Brownstone, provided by Miles Schumann of Rock Camp the Podcast. Foo Fighters' Best of You, provided by Coco Kinnan of Winona Fighter. Seven Dust's Denial, provided by Patreon mixtaper Tom Hutchinson. The Darkness, I Believe in a Thing Called Love, provided by Zach Derby of Neatcast. Me First and the Gimme Gimme Science Fiction double feature provided by Matt Kennedy of X Radio X. Black Guy Fawkes' New American Meltdown, provided by Ed Kennard of Fawkes and Friends. The Angels' Dogs Are Talking, provided by Patreon mixtaper Seeker. And The Cult, She Sells Sanctuary, provided by Robin Wilson of the Gym Blossoms. Head over to myweeklymixtape.com to hear all the songs we've discussed in this mix through the playlist embedded on the episode page. Now, coming up in Volume 2, or songs 21 through 40, if you're listening to this as a single playlist, we've got Matt Scannell of Vertical Horizon, ZZ Ward, Jesse Dayton, and John Laurie of both Tantric and Smile Empty Soul, among many, many other past guests, friends of the show, and of course, the incredible Patreon mixtapers. If you have a song that you feel would add to the ultimate mixtape, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out to me at myweeklymixtape@gmail.com or via social media, where you can find me on almost all the social media haunts at myweeklymixtape. You can also head to myweeklymixtape.com to check out the full catalog of My Weekly Mixtape episodes. And finally, if you like what you're hearing on the show, you can help me out by either telling a friend, leaving the show a 5-star review wherever you're tuning in, or becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. There you can find ad-free episodes of the show, gain early access to future My Weekly Mixtape episodes, chime in on upcoming topics, become a future guest, and so much more. Now, this is the point of the show that I would normally say that's all for this week, but it's not, because Volume 2 and Volume 3 are coming your way later this week, so I'll close by simply saying thank you for listening, and until next time, enjoy the tunes.